In my previous life, due to the scarcity of supplies, I was callously cast aside, left to confront life and death all alone. Gazing at the receding car, I slowly rose to my feet, only to discover that the heirloom jade bracelet had shattered upon the ground. In the blink of an eye, the scene before my eyes underwent a sudden transformation, and a vast expanse of flat ground emerged prominently. The shrill and piercing roars of zombies reverberated in my ears. I regained my senses, and looking at the still intact jade bracelet, an inexplicable impulse surged within me. I picked up the bracelet and forcefully smashed it onto the ground. Instantaneously, that expanse of flat ground once again came into view. I came to my awareness anew, and then realized that this was in fact a space. Just at that moment, a zombie had approached to within less than half a meter. I couldn't refrain from cursing. Damn it. I only find out this bracelet has a space when I'm on the verge of death. What use is it now? Subsequently, that spine-chilling snapping sound resounded as the zombie severed my trachea, and I met my demise. In a daze, it seemed as if someone was calling my name. I struggled to lift my eyelids, a glimmer of astonishment in my eyes. Mom. You still know I'm your mom? You're late for work. 20 alarm clocks couldn't rouse you. I hastened to get up and hurriedly finish my breakfast. Only then did I come to my senses. So I had been reborn. I fumbled about in a fluster to check the calendar. The date indicated August 26, 2025. In merely 5 days, the zombie virus would break out. It would commence spreading from a school on September 1st and permeate the entire country within 2 weeks. At this juncture, foreign countries had already succumbed. Just as I was immersed in thought, I suddenly felt a flick on my head. It was my mother urging me to go to work again. Without further ado, I expeditiously submitted my resignation application and concealed myself in the study, my heart brimming with curiosity about the bracelet's space. After all, I was a person with an insatiable sense of curiosity. I removed the bracelet from my wrist, my mind replete with the spatial scene I had witnessed before my death. Just as I was about to shatter the bracelet, the scene before my eyes abruptly transformed into a large expanse of flat ground, approximately 200 square meters in size. I casually picked up a book and placed it on the ground. Then when I regained my senses, I was back in the study. I silently recited space in my heart, and the book miraculously returned to my hand. My heart was pounding vigorously. I resolved to hoard supplies and eke out a living until the zombie crisis reached its end. However, when I inspected my Alipay balance, there was a mere 9,000 yuan. Looking at my WeChat, there was only 2 yuan. I was left dumbfounded, pondering my space. An unethical thought emerged in my mind, yet reason admonished me not to act on it. Thus I decided to seek assistance from my parents. Just as I was marshaling my words, the sound of the door opening suddenly emanated from behind me. Jinjija. My mother's thunderous roar resounded. Jiangyu, what are you doing at home instead of going to work? Hasten to work. Then my mother beheld me in tears. I truly yearned for the sound of my mother scolding me. See ho, I added, I've resigned. While my mother hadn't yet flown into a rage, I informed her of the zombie outbreak and the bracelet in one breath. Finally catching my breath, I said, Mom, money is inanimate, while people are alive. Life is but once. If the money is gone, we can earn it anew, but if people are gone then. My ear was grasped by my mother, and I had to cease brainwashing and get to the point. Mom, give me some money. I wish to stockpile supplies. Instead of releasing her hold, my mother tightened her grip. Just as I was about to cry out, I heard my mother's skeptical voice. Have you perused too many novels? If there truly are zombies, I'm George A. Romero. Mom, seeing is believing. Ouch, it hurts. Then where are the zombies? Let me see. Of course, the zombies wouldn't make an appearance until 5 days later. A sudden inspiration struck me. Could I take refuge in the space? There was no other reason. It was simply that my mother's ear pulling was excruciatingly painful. Woo-woo. I silently recited space in my heart. And then, I entered the space once more, along with my mother who was still tugging at my ear. Alas, I should have hurled that zombie into the space earlier. Then I wouldn't have met an untimely death. But then I reflected that, fortunately, I hadn't. Now I had ample time to prepare supplies. I wrenched free from my mother's grasp and declared righteously. You've seen it now, haven't you? You'll surely behold the zombies in 6 days. The most pressing matter at present is to stockpile supplies first. Mom, what on earth are you doing? Even if there are zombies, we don't have to resort to eating dirt. My dear mother must have been jolted, for she was actually consuming dirt. Woo-woo. My mother cast a glare at me, then set down the dirt in her hand and addressed me. This soil seems suitable for cultivation. I heard my father's voice. I promptly came to my senses, and the scene before my eyes reverted to the study. Then, I beheld my father frantically shaking my mother. Subsequently, I closed my eyes and with a thought, found myself in the space again. Taking my mother's hand, I encountered a irate mother. Jiang Baogua, why are you not going to work just like your daughter? Oh, it turned out he had forgotten his documents. But, could you desist from whispering and regarding me with a look as if I were a fool? My parents conversed in whispers for a considerable while, and my father perused his phone for a spell. So I acquired an unemployed father. Then, my father opened the door and departed. My mother glared at me, grasped my hand, and propelled me forward, saying, "What are you standing there for? Let's go purchase supplies. Isn't online shopping more convenient?" Oh, indeed. Then, I witnessed my mother seated on the sofa, opening Xiaohongshu, searching for what to prepare for a zombie outbreak. And then, she commenced making phone calls. She didn't forget to bellow at me. Go to the supermarket and procure some daily necessities first. 3. I stepped out, opened the car door, got into the vehicle, then got out again. I opened Xiaohongshu and entered the supermarket. I purchased 20 toothbrushes, 100 tubes of toothpaste, 50 bottles of shampoo, 40 bottles of body wash, 50 buckets of laundry detergent, 50 bars of soap, 40 sets of pajamas, 60 packs of sanitary products, including daily, nightly, and overnight pads, 200 pairs of disposable underwear, 50 pairs of socks, and 12 sets of down jackets. Considering the dishwashing issue, I bought 100 instant noodle buckets, 10 rolls of tin foil, and 500 pairs of disposable chopsticks. Due to financial constraints, I couldn't buy more, yet still, the balance was insufficient. Consequently, my mother transferred 100,000 yuan to me. I carried these items to the car, and stowed them away in the space each time I got in. Then, I received an urgent call from my mother, asking me to buy several power banks, and fully charge them outside. I bought 50 100-watt power banks, and charged them, at the reception center of a new property across the street from the community. During this time, I sent the shopping receipts to my mother's phone, and she sent back 2 60-second voice messages. You've only bought so little. Don't you need to buy clothes and quilts? What about dishwashing liquid? Won't you wash dishes in pots? Are these few instant noodle buckets enough? Only 60 packs for the bathroom. Will they last a year? Why don't you buy thick soled socks? What will you do in winter? And where are the slippers? Will 200 pairs of disposable underwear last 5 months? Alright, stop buying things. Later, go pick up your brother, and take a leave for him by the way. 4. As soon as I got home, I was astounded. The windows at home had all been replaced with 5 cm thick bulletproof glass, all pasted with one-way vision film. The blackout curtains were also the thickest. Electric fences were set up outside the windows. Looking at the drone on the sofa, I twitched the corners of my mouth and said, "Mom, have you ever thought about how the drone will work with fully enclosed windows?" My mother tapped my head and said, "There's an opening in the attic." I went up to the attic, and found it messier than I had imagined. A pile of lethal weapons were there. A slingshot, a sledgehammer, an axe, and some large and small controlled knives. Other supplies were also placed in disarray. Some custom-made knives haven't arrived yet. Let's go out and take a look. The small window next to the attic led to the outdoor balcony. But now it wasn't open air anymore. It was covered by 2-finger-thick steel bars. And then there were solar panels covering half of the roof. "Mom, what about water if we only have electricity? What do you think this side is for?" I looked up at the steel bars and said, "Do you think the water for washing the steel bars tastes good?" My mother gave me a blank look and said, "Use a funnel to directly collect water into the water tank." Then she turned around and went downstairs. My mother went downstairs, left the community, entered the property across the street, and I was with her. Then we entered a ground floor house. Looking at my mother's tightly wrapped clothes and tugging at the hood on my head. Yes, it was the kind of hood that robbers wear. I really wasn't that socially fearless. Fortunately, few people used the fire escape. Here, I reflected on my occupation of the life-saving passage. My mother opened the door and revealed a large number of supplies. She threw a thick stack of receipts at me. So thick. The 2-bedroom, 1-living-room, 2-bathroom house was completely filled. Standing at the door, I didn't know where to put my feet. Alright, stuff these into the space. I silently recited space in my heart. In front of me was flat ground, and my hands were empty. It seems that the space can only hold things that are in contact with people. My mother and I looked at each other, our eyes under the black masks gazing at each other. You pull me, I pull you, you pull it. And somehow I could understand. I held my mother's hand, and we each lay on a large box. Then, the large box disappeared, and we were lying on another box. Watching the continuous appearance of goods in the space, I felt a pang of pain. Finally, I was lying on the ground. The box above my head also crashed down. I quickly came to my senses, and it was pitch black in front of me. My mother shouted again. "What's going on? We're buried in the supplies. How was I supposed to know there was such a bug?" Now the supplies could only be transferred to the space bit by bit. "How do you enter the space?" my mother asked. "Just recite space in your heart." I picked up another supply and entered the space. "Mom, where are you? Mom, are you calling for a soul?" My mother could enter the space by herself now, without the need for the you, me, it method. Dog head emoji. So, my mother and I pounced on a large pile of supplies, and began the journey of transferring supplies. Damn it. Even with the space, we're still exhausted. Never mind, if we had to move these by hand, we'd be dead tired. I comforted myself in my heart. Finally, my mother and I finished transferring the supplies in the living room. I can't do it anymore. I'm exhausted. Mom, perseverance leads to victory. As I spoke, I opened the door of the bathroom. Well, I was stunned for the nth time today. The bathroom was full of live chicks and ducklings. Then my mother picked up a box containing chicks. Then my mother plunged headfirst into a pile of chicks. My mother fainted and then woke up. The box disappeared, and the chicks were running around in the bathroom chirping. Why can only the box enter the space? I voiced my suspicion. Mom, is it possible that living things can't stay in the space? Last time in the study, when I came out of the space, my mother was still inside, but our bodies were outside the space. My mother refused to believe it. She grabbed 2 chicks and fainted again. Her head just happened to have an intimate contact with the ground. The chicks were still chirping in my mother's hands. You're right. Forget it. Let's deal with other things first. With the joint efforts of my mother and me, we finally finished moving the supplies before dark. 5. Mom, is it possible that wearing this hood makes us more conspicuous? Through the 2 holes of the hood, I once again saw my mother rolling her eyes. The 200 square meter space was neither too big nor too small. Without sorting the supplies, they were spread all over the floor. When I got home, I was even more shocked. The anti-theft door had been replaced with an explosion-proof door. It really gave a full sense of security. Woo-woo. The living room was filled with shelves, both horizontally and vertically. My mother and I sat on the sofa and turned on the air conditioner. Old Jiang, the air conditioner outside is too noisy. Go and deal with it. My daughter and I will go to the space to sort out the supplies. My mother gulped down a large glass of water on the sofa. Alas, it felt like someone was missing at home. My mother's hand holding the water paused. Your brother is still at the tutoring class. My mother and I rushed to the tutoring class and saw my brother under the street lamp. As expected of my brother, he was really studious. He didn't forget to read and study under the street lamp. Then, my mother roughly snatched the book from my brother's hand. On it was written prominently, The Diary of Slacking in the Apocalypse. Well, very appropriate. Now the problem to consider was that my mother was riding an electric bike, and there were 3 of us. My mother left a sentence. You 2 don't go home for now. Stay in a hotel. Then, she rode away quickly, leaving my brother and me in a daze on the roadside. My brother and I walked while chatting. I suspected that my brother was like 100,000 wise. Sister, if there really are zombies, can we defeat them? We won't fight. We'll just survive until the zombies go extinct. Sister, will zombies mutate into intelligent beings? They will mutate, but it's uncertain about intelligent beings. After all, I died less than a month after the zombie outbreak. Moreover, humans would mutate along with the zombies. Sister, after the zombie virus breaks out, won't I have to go to school anymore? You're wrong, little brother. Learning is endless. My brother laughed for a while before saying, We're almost out of our lives, and you still want me to study. Survival is more important, okay? Hee, it's not up to you. Your life is in my hands. In order to prevent my brother from slacking off in his studies after learning about the zombie outbreak, I decided not to tell him the news of the zombie outbreak for the time being. Jiang Jia. I looked at my brother who was reading a book. If zombies come, what supplies would you prepare? Food, clothes, and things to play with. And laxatives. My brother suddenly got excited. Sister, let me tell you. At noon today in the tutoring class, my deskmate squatted in the toilet for half an hour and asked me to bring laxatives for him. I thought about it. In the apocalypse, one definitely couldn't be picky about food. So, what if one got constipated? Thus, I ordered another 100 tubes of laxatives on my phone. Sister, when will the apocalypse come? I want to fight zombies. Fight what? Just stay at home. At night, the stars were twinkling. The building across from the hotel lit up with lights. The warm, yellow lights made the night softer. No one realized the coming of the apocalypse. 6. The next day, I ordered a take out for my brother early in the morning and planned to wake him up to go to the tutoring class. I knocked on the door, but there was no response. Looking at my watch, it was not even 7 o'clock yet. So, I decided to let my brother sleep a little longer and go to check out first. After checking out and preparing to wake my brother up, I heard a person around the corner talking on the phone. I got it. You guys come back to the country soon. I heard that all flights between 50 state country and 5-star country will be suspended tomorrow. I've already rented a house. If there's not enough time, fly to another country first, and then take a plane to 5-star country. Okay, see you later. I heard the call was about to end, so I went to find my brother. It turned out that everything was traceable. It's just that we ordinary people didn't know. Back in the room, my brother had already woken up and was eating the take out in the living room. I asked him, if the apocalypse comes and you know it in advance, what would you do? I would definitely tell everyone so that everyone can prepare and fight the zombies together. Hee, the first rule of the apocalypse, get rid of the saints first. Do you think they'll believe you just because you tell them? No one will believe you unconditionally except your family. Moreover, if you tell them, they'll assume you've known about it for a long time. I sighed. They'll think their misfortunes are imposed by you. If you had told them earlier, they would have prepared enough supplies, and thus resent you. Just like Gunyan, and I met on the rescue team's vehicle. It's just a pity that she was too kind-hearted. Good intentions don't always get rewarded. Maybe what they get is killing. Sister, it's time. My brother finished the last bite of food, grabbed his bag, and ran outside. I'm leaving first. Bye. Don't forget my food. I almost starved at noon yesterday. My brother's voice gradually faded away. I went out and took a DD, looking at the pedestrians on the street. Everyone was going about their lives as usual. I had no intention of telling them. All I could do was protect myself. After getting off the car, I paid and told the driver to stock up on more food, as there seemed to be another virus. Then I walked away quickly. The COVID-19 in 2019 ended in 2022, and the monkeypox in 2022 ended in 2023. I was afraid he would ask why, because I really couldn't come up with a reason. But when I got home, I had no other thoughts. What could be more delightful than the family eating, chatting, and playing cards together? It turned out that my parents' combat power could be equivalent to 20 of mine. When I got home, the house had been renovated, and most of the supplies had been bought. The whole house was filled to the brim. Seeing me coming, my mother hurriedly pushed me out. First, go to the property next door to transfer the supplies. At this moment, the supplies in the space were stacked high, and the supplies at home were also abundant. Mom, let's sort out the supplies in the space. After sorting, there will be more room. My mother gently tapped my forehead with her finger and said, not in a hurry. First, go get the express delivery. Since the courier station was right next to the community, we didn't ask for home delivery and picked up the packages ourselves. Searching for the express delivery was really a difficult process. My mother searched, and I carried them to the car. Actually, I went back to the car to remove the outer courier bags and put them into the space. On the way home, I asked my mother why there weren't many large items. My mother said that the items with high demand had been delivered to the property across the street, and some of these had been repackaged. Facing the zombie virus that would break out in 4 days, instead of panicking, I even had a glimmer of anticipation. Then, I felt a sense of guilt towards myself. Mom, should we sort out the supplies now? Let's buy some more first. Besides, just now I got a few more express deliveries. At least we didn't have to go back to the courier station. 7. In the next 3 days, my mother and I repeatedly picked up express deliveries, transferred the supplies to the space, picked up and dropped off my brother at the tutoring class, and visited all the snack streets and restaurants in City M. My father had been busy strengthening our little nest. Although the area was only 190 square meters after removing the shared area, fortunately, the top floor came with an attic, so it became 190 square meters plus 150 square meters, plus a 40 square meter rooftop balcony. To make us live comfortably in the apocalypse, my father had been constantly busy. On the afternoon of August 30th, I told my brother about the zombies. By then, my brother's tutoring class had already stopped, and the students were all preparing for the new semester. My brother downloaded a bunch of anime from Bilibili overnight. My mother downloaded a lot of TV dramas and movies, and also bought a network disc with 10,000 novels from Pinduoduo, and downloaded them all. My father didn't download anything, because he had ordered a bunch of books himself. On the early morning of the 31st, we locked the door in reverse, and the 360-degree rotating camera at the main entrance also started to operate. As we were worried that this camera might be deliberately damaged, we installed 2 pinhole cameras as an extra safeguard. Since my father had been the most hard-working recently, we let him take a rest first, and my mother, my younger brother, and I entered the space to sort out the supplies. The sun was shining brightly outside, and the solar panels had long been at work. Inside the space, we stared at each other blankly. Truly, shopping brings momentary pleasure, but organizing is a nightmare. We had no choice but to brace ourselves and start sorting. My younger brother was in charge of drawing a floor plan for storing supplies and counting them. My mother and I were responsible for moving the items. We divided the space into 5 zones, with the codes being A, B, C, D, and D respectively. According to my younger brother's statistics, the supplies in Zone A are as follows. 100 bags of compressed biscuits, 50 bags of flour at 50 kilograms each, 30 bags of rice at 50 kilograms each, 30 bags of millet at 50 kilograms each, 10 bags of red beans at 50 kilograms each, 20 bags of mung beans at 50 kilograms each, 5 bags of rock sugar at 50 kilograms each, 5 bags of brown sugar at 50 kilograms each, 5 bags of white sugar at 50 kilograms each, 300 packs of thin noodles, 100 packs of wide noodles, 300 boxes of instant noodles, 100 boxes of 8 treasure porridge, and a total of 40 boxes of various kinds of bread. We used 50 kg bags of supplies like compressed biscuits and flour as the base, stacking them up. When it came to placing the bread, we had to use a ladder. On top of the bread were all kinds of snacks. The supplies in Zone B are as follows. 600 large barrels of mineral water, 100 large bottles of Coke, 100 large bottles of Sprite, 30 boxes of pear juice with rock sugar, 50 boxes of Talunsa milk, 50 boxes of Jindian milk. These supplies were placed against the wall. My mother and I first bundled 4 large barrels of drinking water together, and then stacked them crosswise. Boxes of pear juice with rock sugar, Talunsa milk, and Jindian milk could be stacked directly. For Coke and Sprite, we used several storage shelves. The supplies in Zone C, dehydrated or vacuum-packed, are as follows. 20 gene of mushrooms, 50 boxes of ham, 100 salted duck eggs, 200 boxes of beef jerky. Since there were not many of these items, we placed them in the middle of Zone A and Zone B, and added a few more shelves. The supplies in Zone D are as follows. 200 bags of salt, 50 cans of broad bean paste, 100 cans of beef sauce, 50 bottles of vinegar, 50 bottles of soy sauce, 100 large barrels of peanut oil, 100 packs of lazy person seasoning packets. These items were placed next to Zone A, diagonally opposite Zone B, and we used 10 shelves. The supplies in Zone E include various vegetable seeds, nutrient solutions, nutrient soil, and pesticides. Mom, do we need pesticides indoors? I want to test DDV on zombies. Zone E is next to Zone B, diagonally across from Zone A. We stood in the middle of Zone D and Zone E, with some large unclassified boxes beside us. My mother and I took that pile of large boxes out of the space. My mother and I were extremely sleepy, while my younger brother seemed unusually excited. I wondered what he would think if he knew that one of the boxes contained his teaching aids. 8. It was already dark, and the last day before the end of the world had passed. Looking at the supplies in the attic, I decided to go downstairs to sleep first, and then continue sorting. After going downstairs, I was not only sleepy but also had a headache. There were so many supplies to sort. When would it end? My mother was also yawning and decided to go to sleep. On the third day, I woke up early in the morning. My mother had already gotten up. We decided to start sorting from the attic. Even in the apocalypse, the living standard couldn't be too low. The area directly facing the rooftop balcony would be used as a study. My mother and I used the space to move the bookshelves from the original study to both sides. Since there were a lot of books, we spent quite a while categorizing and sorting them. In the middle of the room, I placed 2 tables, one for my younger brother to study on, and one for taking notes usually. The other rooms in the attic were all filled. One room was converted into an arsenal, one into a medicine room, and one into an electrical appliance storage room. By the time we finished sorting, it was already noon, and my father and my younger brother just woke up. My younger brother was responsible for counting the quantity and expiration date of the medicines. My father was responsible for counting the quantity of the electrical appliances. Cleaning up downstairs was much simpler. My bedroom was divided into 2 halves, with soundproof boards installed all around. One half was for raising chickens, and the other half for raising ducks. The bed was moved to the living room. The supplies that couldn't fit in the space were transferred to my younger brother's bedroom. The statistics are as follows. 100 boxes of self-heating hot pot, 100 boxes of self-heating rice, 2 shelves filled with various dried fruits, and some vermicelli. In my parents' bedroom, there were 5 freezers and 2 refrigerators. 4 freezers were filled with fresh meat, and 1 freezer contained frozen dumplings, frozen wontons, and glutinous rice balls. The refrigerator was filled with ingredients for making spicy hot pot. The lower layer was filled with meat and various meatballs, and the upper layer contained fresh vegetables. Both refrigerators were full. The original study was filled with daily necessities and had 7 shelves. The first shelf contained 50 vacuum, compressed quilts and pillows. The second shelf held the clothes of the whole family. Each person had 30 sets of thin pajamas, 40 sets of thick pajamas, and 13 sets of down jackets, both long and short. We didn't buy outerwear. In the apocalypse, wearing pajamas was fine. Anyway, we would stay at home and no one would see us. The items on the third shelf were quite miscellaneous. 100 toothbrushes, 200 tubes of toothpaste, 70 bottles of shampoo, 60 bottles of body wash, 70 buckets of laundry detergent, 50 bars of soap, a total of 300 packs of sanitary products, including daily, nightly, and overnight pads, 1,000 pairs of disposable underwear, and 500 pairs of socks. The fourth shelf was filled with toilet paper, 200 packs of tissue paper, with 3 packs in each, and 100 packs of large roll toilet paper, with 60 rolls in each. The fifth shelf held dining utensils, 1,000 packs of disposable cups, with 100 cups in each pack, 2,000 large-sized and 500 small-sized disposable paper bowls, 2,000 pairs of disposable chopsticks, 2 large cans each of chili powder and pepper powder, and 20 buckets of dishwashing liquid. There was no more space on the third shelf. The sixth shelf was for school supplies, 200 boxes of Komiachifu pen refills, with 60 refills in each box, 50 sets of zebra pens, with 11 pens in each set, 100 notebooks of each type, including coil-bound loose leaf and stitched notebooks, in lined, squared, and blank formats, 200 deli correction tapes, 2 large boxes of sticky notes, 50 deli glue sticks and dot glue dispensers each, and 4 boxes of essential balm, to prevent my younger brother from getting sleepy during study. The seventh shelf had a pile of sodium peroxide, spare solar panels, and a spare air purifier. The eighth shelf held 5 drones, batteries of various models, and power banks. The bottom layer was still empty, so we placed 6 electric blankets there. 2 gas cylinders were placed beside the original study for backup. After almost finishing the sorting, I opened a self-heating hot pot. During the 15-minute wait for the hot pot, I went to the rooftop balcony of the attic. Considering that half of it was covered with solar panels, it was not fully enclosed. Instead, it was covered with thick steel bars in a horizontal and vertical net-like pattern. The other half of the rooftop balcony was a rainwater collection and purification system. The purified water could be boiled and used for bathing and washing hair. An air purifier was placed in each room, so there was no need to worry about the stench from rotting corpses. My father was adjusting the telescope by the living room window. My mother and my younger brother had also finished their work. Although I had thought this many times, I still wanted to say, A house full of supplies really gives a great sense of security. Each of us opened a self-heating hot pot, and it was steaming hot. My younger brother didn't have time to eat, and kept observing through the telescope. Sister, are there really zombies? It looks so safe to me. The zombie virus will break out at 7 p.m. It's still early. In my previous life, the zombie virus broke out just as I was getting off work, and hadn't arrived home yet. The continuous car horns seemed to pierce my eardrums. Then, I met a group of people who claimed to be a rescue team. Eventually, I was pushed out of the car by them. From the outbreak of the zombie virus until my death, I never went home. I didn't know if my family in my previous life was still alive. 9. The set alarm clock rang. It was 7 o'clock. The ticking sound of the second hand on the watch seemed to be moving on the tip of my heart. Sister, are you sure there are zombies? As time passed minute by minute, I wasn't sure anymore. Clearly, the zombies had broken out as soon as I got off work in my previous life. Now 5 minutes had passed. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I was observing the outside world through my father's telescope. My parents were calmly eating, while only my younger brother was chattering non-stop. Today is the start of school. The teacher must have already started teaching. I definitely won't be able to outscore my desk mate in this weekly exam. It was normal. Nothing happened. Xiaoyu, come and eat first. Actually, it's not bad to have the house like this. It's safe, hahaha. You don't have to blame yourself. My parents had already paved the way for me and made excuses for my actions. I helplessly picked up the cold self-heating hot pot. Just as I started eating, I faintly heard the sound of car horns. The 5-centimeter thick glass couldn't block the sound of the horns. My younger brother shouted by the window, "Sister, there really are zombies." I quickly leaned over the telescope to look. This time it seemed a bit different from my previous life. In my previous life, the zombie virus had spread from a school. This time it was from a hospital. Why was it different? Why was the outbreak time half an hour later? I was Besabudochijia. Then I saw a familiar face through the telescope. Gunyen. She was still wearing all black clothes, with a duck-billed cap pulled down low, covering half of her face. I could still recognize her at a glance. Sister, you've been looking for so long. It's my turn to look, right? I gave the telescope to my younger brother, and sat at the dining table, continuing to eat. There was a layer of oil floating on the cold self-heating hot pot. I fished out the sausage and vegetables inside, and then went back to the attic. The outbreak time of the zombie virus was incorrect. It was highly likely to be man-made. I didn't think ordinary people had the ability to predict in advance, unless I wasn't the only one who had been reborn. Well, others were preparing for the end of the world, and I was reborn to prepare for the end of the world too. Others, after being reborn, had single-handedly delayed the disaster outbreak time in 5-star country by half an hour. I was reborn to hoard supplies and survive until the end of the apocalypse. I admitted that I was a selfish person. I only wanted my family to be safe. When I was fleeing with the rescue team and getting farther and farther away from home, when I was counting the stars on countless nights, but fearing that one of the stars was a family member, all I could think of in my heart was my family and myself. Disasters could never be reversed by just one person, but I still hoped that the person who might have been reborn could be safe. That person must be extremely kind. Sister, what are you thinking? My younger brother sat across from me, still holding The Diary of Slacking in the Apocalypse. Before I could answer, he started talking on his own. Sister, I decided to write a book too. Can you help me think of a title? What are you chatting about? Hurry up and study. My mother's voice came from behind. Even in the apocalypse you can't slack off. Your mother and I don't have high demands. Just study for 2 hours every working day. My father chimed in. My younger brother showed a despairing expression and looked at me. I want to study, but I'm powerless. My self-study level is not high, and the accuracy rate of doing exercises must be low too. It's better for me to help you observe the zombies and take notes, right sister? No. I pointed to the bookshelves on the right. There are 2 bookshelves full of your teaching aids there, and I also have online courses. I paused and showed the most perverted smile in my life. Little brother, if you don't understand you can ask me. After all, learning is endless. Then we went downstairs, leaving my younger brother wailing in pain in the attic. Since there were still quite a few fresh vegetables in the refrigerator, we decided to have spicy hot pot tonight. The pot was steaming. The hot soup mixed with milk was boiling. Various ingredients were put into the pot. I deliberately put more glutinous rice balls that I liked. We sat at the dining table. The steam in front of me blurred my eyes. I exhaled and blew the steam away a bit. It was so fragrant. Even after eating delicacies for several days, this bowl of spicy hot pot was still more fragrant. Just thinking that there would be a lot of time in the future to explore other dishes made me excited. We had enough supplies to last until the end of the apocalypse. The future was always full of hope. My country would never abandon her people. 10. After dinner, my younger brother and I vied with each other to observe the zombies. My younger brother was also earnestly taking notes with a small notebook. Downstairs, there were already several zombies strolling around leisurely. Let's tentatively call them Zombie 1.0. Zombie 1.0 moved very slowly, and had weak attack power. Besides biting people by surprise and launching group attacks, I didn't think they could cause much harm to humans. In 2 weeks, there would be a reign that would last for about 3 days. That would be the beginning of the zombies' evolution. Along with the zombies, humans would also evolve. Some humans would develop superpowers. However, within 2 weeks, Humans could still arm themselves and go out on the streets to search for supplies. Considering that there were still people in this building, the elevator couldn't be stopped. But my father had great confidence in the 2 explosion-proof doors installed at home, so I didn't have much to worry about. In my previous life, I was entangled with zombies for nearly a month, and finally lost my life to them. Naturally, I witnessed the evolution of both zombies and humans. Sister, look quickly. My younger brother was calling me, sounding very excited. There's a group of people fighting zombies. I leaned over the telescope and was startled. The license plate number was the same as in my previous life. Several people got out of the car, holding long knives, and launched an attack on the slow-moving zombies. Soon most of the zombies were cleared. Another car came, and they started distributing supplies. My hand at my waist clenched into a fist. I carefully looked at the people distributing supplies. It seemed that they were somewhat different from those in my previous life. The third difference. The trajectory of the apocalypse had been rewritten, and the future was gradually getting out of my prediction. Clearly, in my previous life, on the day the virus broke out, when they picked me up, we were immediately targeted by zombies and headed north all the way. Why were they still in the city in this life? It must be that the night was too deep and the moonlight was too dim. So I didn't see clearly. It must be. But it felt like they were slowly moving in this direction. My shoulder was slapped hard. Sister, look downstairs. Downstairs, an SUV had parked there at some point, with its front facing our building. There was no car parked here when we had dinner today. It should have arrived during dinner. But I was looking into the distance and didn't notice. We had never seen this kind of car in the community before. And it came after the zombie virus broke out. What was its purpose? Soon, the car started its engine and drove away. It also led away some zombies. Were they using our community as a parking lot, or had some other purpose? The street lights were on, but there were hordes of zombies on the streets. When would we be able to return to normal life? It was morning again. As soon as the sky brightened, I went to the telescope to observe that group of people. They were moving towards our direction, while fighting zombies along the way. There were more zombies over there, so their progress was not smooth. However, I could be sure that they were not the same group as in my previous life. Some people in the community had already driven out to look for supplies. I asked my younger brother to continue observing that group of people, and then fried 10 slices of bread. I added water to the electric kettle, and heated several boxes of milk. My mother got up and stir-fried several side dishes. For a family with sufficient supplies, the outbreak of the zombie virus, and the little days of eating and sleeping every day were not bad. The people who went out to search for supplies in the community had gradually returned, carrying things upstairs one trip after another. It seemed that they had a good harvest. 5 people from our building went out to search for supplies, namely a college student on the 3rd floor, who had just got his driver's license, a couple on the 5th floor, a female white collar on the 11th floor, and a Dainon who often didn't go out downstairs. Let's play Dodiju. We're short of one person. Who wants to come? My mother was dealing cards at the dinner table and shouted to us. Sister, you go. I'm busy. We played until noon. My mother was so engrossed in playing cards that she opened a box of self-heating rice for each of us. After the rice was cooked, my mother reluctantly put away the cards. Sister, that group of people has about 10 people. 6 are fighting zombies, and 4 are collecting supplies. The vehicle they use to collect supplies is a truck. It's enough for them to survive for a long time. My younger brother took a bite of rice and continued. By the way, there were quite a few people who went out to search for supplies today. Some of them killed a few zombies directly by hitting their heads when they finished moving the supplies. The scene. Then he was kicked by my mother. Even food can't shut your mouth. Eat. Although it was the apocalypse, this scene was still somewhat warm, very similar to life before the apocalypse. The days of eating, drinking, sleeping, observing zombies, and tutoring my younger brother in his homework passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. The group of people I had been observing had cleared most of the zombies in one area. Recently, they had been killing zombies day and night. I felt that they wanted to kill as many zombies as possible before the zombies evolved. They had fought their way to our community. Some of them were stationed in our community, and some continued to move forward. 11. There was one day left until the zombies evolved. There had been no moon recently. They were roasting meat downstairs in my house, and placed several bottles of perfume around the roasting area. The remaining zombies around the community were walking around like headless flies. This method was quite effective, but the smell of the roasted meat mixed with the perfume must not be pleasant. This should be the last time to roast meat in the apocalypse. The rain that would start tomorrow night would last for 3 days. The zombies' sense of smell and hearing would become stronger, and their speed would also increase. That mysterious SUV hadn't been around recently. It should have gone to deal with the zombies. From my recent observations, not all of this group of people were new. There were also several capable people from my previous life. The reborn person was likely someone I knew in my previous life, and was from the rescue team. But why did they station in the community where I lived? Did they know that there were supplies here? The people who voted to abandon Gunyen in my previous life were not here. Then it should be someone who was familiar with Gunyen. Gunyen should only be familiar with me, right? And Gunyen's superpower of being able to detect whether there were zombies within a radius of 100 meters with her mental power should be very important, right? Since they were familiar with Gunyen, why wasn't she here? I turned on the recording function of the spare mobile phone and tied it to the drone, planning to place it in the grass next to them at night. There were no bugging devices or voice recorders among the supplies. How careless of me. I hurriedly went up to the attic to call the 3 people who were studying the college entrance examination, reading comprehension down for a meeting. When they were coming down the stairs, they were still discussing that the eyes of fish had a strange red glow. Sister, will there be a day when the eyes of zombies also have a strange red glow? I don't know. Let's have a meeting. As soon as she heard about the meeting, my mother got busy again. She poured a glass of Coke for each of us, and put out the bread she had newly baked, which was as hard as a rock. My father and my younger brother were studying the intentions of the question setters and the ideas of the authors. Well, they were really studious. Keep it up. Dad, is Xiaoya only in junior high school? Why is he doing high school reading comprehension? My father didn't say anything and looked very speechless. Sister, are you stupid? Mom insisted that Dad teach me. In Chinese, I can still read the articles. Do you know how we father and son have been living these days? Your dad's hair has turned white with anger. He patted my younger brother on the shoulder. He doesn't even understand quadratic functions. Old Jiang, it's your fault. You didn't explain it clearly. As your son, I'm also very helpless, okay? 2 novices arguing with each other. I chose to block it out. My mother took out several cakes with cream on them, and the meeting finally started. I cleared my throat and said, I'm reborn. My parents looked at each other and smiled. We know. My younger brother. Ha 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 gua, hey, you all believe it. My mother rested her chin in her hand and took a piece of cake. Why not believe it? That time your sister was dreaming and shouting Gunyan's name crazily, and also saying things like don't eat her, save her and so on. Did I really? I don't know. My father always agreed with my mother. That's right. She also shouted a lot of things like Mom and Dad, I miss you so much. So cheesy. Just based on this, they believed I was reborn. I'm not convinced. Also at the beginning, you told us about the outbreak of the zombie virus. I don't believe you have the ability to predict. My mother added, oh funny? Being reborn is much more far-fetched than predicting, okay? Seeing my mother reasoning step by step that I was reborn, I decided to let her be proud for a while and didn't refute. Only my younger brother seemed to be in a bad state. He stood up, stepped on the chair with one foot, and said, I want to resist. I won't yield to you dark forces. Since you all knew about the outbreak of the zombie virus long ago, why didn't you tell me? Because we were afraid it would delay your studies. I replied, don't you think it's too much? Clearly, I'm also a member of the family, but you didn't let me participate in stockpiling supplies. My favorite comic books and game consoles weren't bought woo-woo. You did participate. Didn't you suggest buying laxatives? I replied again, well if you have nothing to say, just stop talking. We did it for your own good. My father replied. Then my younger brother hummed and left. He left neatly. You called us down. What's the matter? My mother asked as she ate the bread. Woo-woo. My mother still cared about me the most. Your father and I are going to watch your younger brother study. I was completely stunned. Was studying more important than a daughter? I was pushed out of the car and then bitten to death by zombies. That should be because you were useless, so you were pushed out. Well, Dad, you really know your daughter too well. What you said wasn't words but a knife, woo-woo. Then my father and my mother sat opposite me, looking very serious. The atmosphere now felt very much like an interrogation scene. I seemed to be a little white mouse shivering in the laboratory. Who pushed you out? Confess honestly. Explain the whole story clearly. Dad, Mom, don't be excited. I'm okay now. I was really scared. It was that man with the flower arm tattoo. Because I didn't have superpowers, he pushed me. My father and my mother both leaned on the windowsill and whispered to each other. The last time they whispered was when my mother saw the space and started stockpiling supplies. Superpowers? What are you talking about? Are there really superpowers? My younger brother came over again at some point. Why? Why did he come just when I was in such a mess? Didn't you leave? Get out. Sister, tell me clearly. My younger brother picked up a small cake as he spoke and then shouted, Dad, Mom, hurry. My younger brother is spitting blood. Then the 3 of us saw my younger brother spit out a tooth. No way. He was in junior high school and still losing teeth? Then my younger brother threw the cake on the plate, and the plate broke. I should have used a disposable instant noodle bucket. Another plate is broken. What a pity. Mom, the tooth is over there. My younger brother's mouth was stuffed with toilet paper by my father, and he couldn't speak clearly. There will be a heavy rain tomorrow night, and then the zombies will evolve. I finished talking. I'm going to sleep first. I opened Jihu and searched. My mother's cake was so hard that it knocked out my younger brother's tooth. What should I do? After typing, I remembered that the internet was down. Actually, the electricity was also cut off. But because there were solar panels at home, I didn't notice. The person who pushed me out of the car in my previous life was named Wu Yi. Such a person must never be left in the team. He pushed me out of the car in my previous life. It was impossible for him to turn over a new leaf in this life. He also took the lead in speaking ill of Gun Yan and shaking people's hearts. Such a scumbag must not be left. One of the ways to suffer from insomnia. Thinking about a scumbag. I sat on the bed irritably. One of the advantages of the bed being in the living room was that I could get up and wander around at any time. My reflection was shown on the window. I rested my chin in my hand and looked downstairs. The night was like a black monster. It opened its big mouth and devoured this world. Now it should be daytime in 50-state country. Gun Yan once told me that the zombie virus spread from 50-star country. I wonder how the people there are. Was the virus developed For this almost certain question, I dared not believe it. If it was really man-made, what was the purpose? My thoughts were interrupted by two beams of light. That SUV arrived in the community again. The voice-activated street lights in the community turned on. And I finally saw clearly that there had been someone on night watch all along. The people in the car finally got out. It was Gunyan. A hand was placed on my shoulder, scaring me. My mother's voice came. What are you doing up in the middle of the night? Nothing. Mom, I want some of my younger brother's blood. Maybe I could use the smell of blood to get rid of Wu Yi. Now at this time, your father may have already gone to sleep. I'll get it for you tomorrow. The blood would stop bleeding by tomorrow. I looked at my mother, and suddenly thought that the blood from washing pork might be the same. My mother seemed to misunderstand my meaning. She said wait and then went upstairs. Soon my younger brother's howling sound came from upstairs. Fortunately, the glass in my house was thick and had good sound insulation. I was just about to say that my younger brother was being overly sensitive when lo and behold, I saw my mother coming downstairs with a small Coke bottle filled with 1/8 of the blood water mixture. Mom, is my younger brother really your biological son? Otherwise, why do you think I diluted it? Go to sleep. Insomnia method number 2, random thoughts. What are you tossing and turning for? You're so noisy. Now I had to turn over more gently. It suddenly occurred to me, could the reborn person be Gunyan? If it was Gunyan, everything would make sense. If you don't sleep, get out and feed the zombies. Tossing and turning like this, do you still want others to sleep? I won't turn over anymore, I won't. As I spoke, I put on my slippers. Gunyan's car was parked downstairs in the community. In this life, may she be safe. 12. The result of staying up late was that when I woke up, I found that everyone was already having a meal. I thought it was breakfast, but it turned out to be lunch. I looked at the dark circles under my mother's eyes, my father's palm, and my younger brother's resentful little eyes. Then I calmly started eating. Eating under the gazes of 3 people was truly delicious. When my mother didn't experiment with new dishes, her cooking skills were really good. You're eating quite heartily. Yesterday you tossed and turned in bed. Then you even got out of bed and walked around. You don't sleep and you don't let others sleep either. I was sound asleep when I was slapped awake by your mother. She insisted on drawing blood from your younger brother. What does she need his blood for? I was woken up by the sound of the slap. Then I had alcohol sprayed all over my hand and got my finger pricked. Forget it, I chose to escape again. I coughed artificially and decided to change the topic. I put down my chopsticks and said, do you know that there will be 3 days of heavy rain? Is our family prepared? Then we need to save electricity. I'm afraid the electricity generated in the previous few days won't last for 3 days. Also, our rainwater collection system can be put into use. My father said, finally, I don't have to take a bath with purified water. I've been reluctant to use it. My younger brother said laughing. Then, I saw the tooth that had fallen out from his lower row. The overcast sky was oppressive. In the semi-dark sky, there were a few birds flying from time to time. The birds in the apocalypse were really pitiful. Their feathers were black and white in patches, and one of them seemed to have a wounded wing, making it extremely difficult for it to fly. However, my younger brother seemed extremely excited. Sister, do you think I'll awaken superpowers? Sister, will people with superpowers have special effects when they fight? Sister, go study. My younger brother was dragged upstairs by my mother, along with my father. According to what my mother said, my younger brother had already finished junior high school math. It's just not known whether he had really learned it. I opened Kugo and played a piece of pure music, Autumn. The sound of the piano spilled out from the phone and spread throughout the entire room. I sat by the window. After the outbreak of the zombies, having nothing to do made me, who was usually active, get used to sitting still. Unconsciously, I fell asleep on the windowsill. 13. When I woke up again, it was already evening. The rain was falling slantingly, hitting the window, and then dripping down. Don't move. I was stunned for a moment, then heard my mother continue. I saw you sleeping with music playing. I thought the mood was nice, so I'm drawing a picture of you. A small night. Light was on next to my mother, and my mother's figure was reflected on the window. Since the outbreak of the zombies, our family only uses small night lights. Firstly, they use batteries, and secondly, they are low-key. Even though the window was pasted with one-way vision film, if someone saw that our house had electricity, it would be really bad. Looking through the window, I saw that my mother was still holding a palette, looking quite professional. Just when my neck was already stiff, my mother finally finished. I couldn't wait to look at my mother's painting. Well, let's just give up. I twitched the corners of my mouth. It was truly an abstract painting. Look at you. You didn't sleep all night yesterday and slept all day today. You didn't do anything. You can't waste time. As she spoke, my mother went up to the attic. During the 3-day heavy rain, I, with nothing to do, still wasted time by reading apocalypse novels for 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, the sky was as if it had been washed, extremely blue, like a blue crystal. But the 3-day heavy rain was no joke. The rainwater had risen above the height of an electric bike. Another week passed before the rainwater receded. My younger brother had been by the window from morning to noon. When having lunch, he said that he hadn't seen anyone using superpowers. No, clearly in my previous life, some people had superpowers as soon as the rain stopped. There were so many questions that I didn't know which one to think about first. I decided to contact Gunyan. A group of people downstairs were cleaning up a mess of things that had been washed into the community by the heavy rain. My younger brother and I studied the drone for a while, and decided to use the drone to send a note. Gunyan, do you have superpowers? Then we released the drone from the attic. Fortunately, the drone had an intelligent obstacle avoidance function, so it didn't get damaged. After going around in circles, the drone finally reached Gunyan's side. Using a drone to send a note instead of for aerial photography was really using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. After a while there was a knock on our door. It had been a long time since anyone had knocked on the door, which startled our whole family. Through the camera, we saw that the person outside the door was Gunyan. My parents seemed to relax immediately. My younger brother picked up a knife and nodded at me. I hesitated for a while, and then went to open the door. As soon as she entered, Gunyan locked the door in reverse. Was she going to kill us to silence us and take over the supplies? You, don't do anything crazy. I have a knife. My younger brother held the knife stuttering. She's afraid there are still other people outside the door. I explained, and then dragged her up to the attic. 14. In the attic none of us spoke. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Gunyan, do you still have superpowers? Are you also reborn? Two voices sounded simultaneously. Reporting one's identity right away was definitely Gunyan. How did you know? Gunyan rubbed her forehead and said, You just asked about superpowers. Come on, at this time in my previous life, many people had superpowers. There won't be superpowers this time. I was full of question marks. What did there won't be superpowers this time mean? Could it be that she could not only delay the outbreak time of the virus, but also had some kind of cheat to make superpowers disappear? Perhaps seeing my confusion, she said something irrelevant. We are both God and the devil, because we want to reverse the current of time and bring the dead back to life. This is a line from Detective Conan. As a fan of Detective Conan, I still knew this. Yes, but in reality, there will also be a dark organization. So, the outbreak of the zombies and our rebirth are both man-made? She knocked my head with my younger brother's textbook and said, The outbreak of the zombies and superpowers are, but rebirth. Maybe there are really people with the ability to reverse time. Come on, theology has turned into Conan. Science, ba science. Truly, the end of the world is science, dog head emoji. I guess someone wanted to study a drug that could control the brain, and then failed. Gunyan said as she casually picked up a piece of paper and wrote and drew on it. Then superpowers should be obtained by extracting certain genes from animals. For example, extracting genes from electric eels, jellyfish and other electric-producing animals, and injecting them into the human body would be the electric superpower. I continued her words. Good thinking. Gunyan stopped writing. Keep going. Maybe we can really get infinitely close to the truth. That heavy rain should have caused the reagents in the laboratory to leak. I felt that my imagination was so rich that I could write a novel after getting affirmation. But I don't understand how they changed human genes. Maybe because there were too many reagents in the laboratory. A chemical reaction occurred when they were mixed. So, the reason there are no superpowers this time is that the reagents were well protected, right? Not quite right because... Gunyan paused and then continued. I disposed of those reagents. That's so awesome. Gunyan is really cool. I'll hold the flag for my sister. Gunyan folded the paper in her hand, raised her eyebrows, and told me to look at it after she left. Gunyan walked to the door. My mother brought out a box of heating rice, and asked Gunyan to take it away. Gunyan told my mother to keep it for herself, saying that she still had supplies. They pushed and declined it, just like the polite refusals when giving gifts during relatives' visits. Auntie, you just keep it. If I take it, what if someone has ulterior motives and causes you trouble? Gunyan's words made my mother's eyes well up with tears. You're such a nice girl. You can do everything, and you even fight zombies to save people. Unlike my Jiangyu. As soon as I heard this, I quickly went back to the attic. My mother was about to complain that I was good for nothing again. Boo-hoo. Seeing me lying on the table, my younger brother comforted me. Sister, you don't have to be sad. Although Gunyan is excellent, you're not bad either. You can eat a lot. A whole bunch of food and 2 boxes of heating rice. Being able to eat is a blessing. I pretended to cry, but now I really wanted to cry. Jiang Jia, go boil some milk. My mother ordered. Open a few more boxes of heating rice. My father added. My parents must have something to say, by sending my younger brother away. Speak. My mother somehow took out a notebook. You and Gunyan. I confess. It's always like interrogating a criminal. Ahem, don't be nervous. I just want to ask how Gunyan died. This question. Gunyan's superpower was mental power, which could detect danger. We were looking for supplies with a group of people. Gunyan suddenly detected a zombie tide. That day was a cloudy day with a drizzle. At that time, Gunyan and I were stocking up on supplies in a mall. Gunyan suddenly told me there was a zombie tide. I pulled her to run, but she insisted on telling the others. Everyone was scattered to look for supplies, and it was hard to gather them all at once. I persuaded Gunyan to run first as there wasn't enough time. She told me to get in the car first and run southeast, and meet her in the small forest in City A. I never thought they would be so vicious. When I went back to look for Gunyan, I just saw her being thrown out. Later I found out that they thought Gunyan deliberately didn't tell them about the zombie tide earlier, so they voted on whether to keep Gunyan or not. Clearly, it was a time to escape, but they had time to vote and couldn't tolerate Gunyan. Their excuse was that there weren't enough seats in the car, but there was clearly another car. The moment Gunyan was thrown out, a zombie jumped out. Those beasts didn't give Gunyan any weapons at all. And that Wu Yi, before pushing me out of the car, said something like Gu Nian knew the news and wanted to run away with me, regardless of others' lives. When the zombies broke out, we joined that rescue team together. Unexpectedly, in the end, both of us were thrown out by the people from the rescue team. You two are quite fated. Even your ways of dying are the same. My mother said while taking notes. Would you like this fortune? My younger brother's self-heating rice was ready. This time, I deliberately restrained myself and only ate one box. In the future, if anyone tells me again that being able to eat is a blessing, I'll beat them up. I've even developed a little belly. After dinner, I lay down on the bed. The slacking off days are so nice. My younger brother was dragged by my parents to evening self-study again. 15. For some reason, I was chased by zombies all night in my dream. I kept Chanso ing through the jungle, unable to find the exit, and a zombie was closely following behind me. Suddenly, a small path appeared in the middle of the jungle. At the end of the path was Gunyan. I quickly ran towards her. She stretched out her hand to me. Just as I reached out my hand, a large zombie jumped out from the side and knocked Gunyan down. Gunyan! I shouted hastily, and then looked up to see the three people by the window. I looked at them, and they looked at me. My younger brother spoke first to break the silence. Sister, what did Nian Jia do before? This kid is quite quick-witted. It hasn't been long since he started calling her Jia. I don't know either. I met her while on the run. A rich woman doesn't stockpile supplies, but actually wants to fight zombies. My younger brother sat on the sofa and picked up a bread. As the saying goes, a fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. Indeed, my younger brother first squeezed the bread, then bite it to take a look before daring to eat it. Then my mother snatched it from him. What are you talking about? Gunyan is a great benefactor to our family. Gunyan is a great benefactor to our family? How come I didn't know? Back then, it was Gunyan who told me there were zombies. Wait, didn't I say it? What you said we didn't believe. It was Gunyan who told your father and me, and transferred 6 million yuan to us, so we. Didn't you get a bank loan? Do you think the bank is that easygoing? I was stunned. My mother and Gunyan had met long ago. I suddenly remembered that I hadn't read the note Gunyan gave me. Sister, what's wrong with you? Are you performing Sichuan opera face changing for me? I suddenly remembered something. I'm going to the attic first. There was nothing but my younger brother's scratch paper on the table. No way, no way. Gunyan's note couldn't have been used for my younger brother's scratch work, right? Sister, what are you rummaging around for? Did you see the note on the table? Did you use it for scratch work? My younger brother put down the Coke cup and said while bending over. How could that be? I carefully saved it for you. Then, I witnessed him taking out the note from under a table leg. He actually used my note to prop up the table leg. This younger brother shouldn't be kept for long. I didn't have time to deal with my younger brother. I quickly opened the note. There were 3 Q version figures, namely my parents who were holding hands and laughing like chrysanthemums. My younger brother holding a knife. Alas, why isn't there me? Turns out I'm not worthy. 16. I thought that every day would be about eating, drinking, and having fun, but unfortunately the weather didn't cooperate. It rained heavily again. The key was that after the rain, some people started to have superpowers. Before I could react, Gunyan came to the door. As soon as I saw her, I took out my notebook and asked her to answer some questions. After recent thinking, I suspected that the outbreak of zombies in 5-star country was a huge conspiracy. Gunyan, I suspect that the outbreak of the zombie virus in 5-star country. Borrow the telescope. She went straight to the telescope in the living room. Fortunately what? Fortunately, it's that the previous superpowers weren't completely dealt with, not that someone did it on purpose. She and I sat by the window. I was still holding my little notebook. Now it's the QA time. The first question. In the previous life, it was said that 50-state country had completely fallen. Why did the first case of the zombie virus in our country appear in this city? Whether it was the school in the previous life, or the hospital in this life, they were both in this city. Clearly, City M was neither a coastal city nor a big city. Maybe the housing prices are cheap. Gunyan said as she took away my notebook. These questions are meaningless. Answering one by one, for example, the first question and the third question can be answered together. After 50-state country fell, that madman was very likely to have moved the entire laboratory to City M. Conducting experiments in City M, naturally, the zombie virus, or rather, the CYM virus, would appear in City M first. No, it should be called the CYM virus. Take control of your mind, controlling people's minds. As for the third question, the purpose of doing this, they experimented on humans naturally, to inject superpowers into those humans, to form an invincible and all-conquering army. Gunyan, I didn't ask about their purpose. I asked about your purpose. Whether in the previous life or this life, Gunyan seemed to be saving people. My younger brother was right. Since she had money, why didn't she stockpile supplies and instead go fight zombies? The zombie virus in our country has been controlled. Other cities and countries are distributing supplies. City M is under my jurisdiction. She went to the dining table to pour a glass of water. You really ask a lot of questions. You don't even pour me a glass of water. You're not as caring as you were in the previous life. Under your jurisdiction, other cities and countries all send troops. Is City M special? It's really special. After all, it's the place where the first case of the zombie virus appeared. When the virus is completely over and making a report, I'll be commended by the leader. Is it for honor? I don't believe it. If it was for honor, she would have done it in the previous life. Your second question, why station in your community? First, it's close to that mad scientist's laboratory, which is convenient for dealing with the reagents many times. Second, it's to repay your care in the previous life. Gunyan said with a smile. She looked really beautiful when she smiled, with curved eyebrows and 2 small dimples. When it rained heavily for 3 days, not many people could share their bread with others, especially in the apocalypse. You've changed a lot compared to the previous life. Why? I asked carefully. This question had puzzled me for a long time, because in the previous life, I had been investigating the problems of the laboratory, so I followed your convoy. Moreover, what you think is just what you think. Sometimes eyes can deceive people. What I think is just what I think. Eyes can deceive people. What did I misunderstand in the middle? What are you thinking about again? Gunyan asked. Oh, nothing. The last question, when were you reborn? Probably around the same time as you. I'm also very surprised by your rebirth. Gunyan took another sip of water. I have to go. Talk to you later when I have time. Wait, what were you looking at with the telescope just now? Was that madman researching people? These are 2 more questions. That virus researching person has been handed over to the country to develop an antidote. Just now, I was looking at the place where he was detained. And one more reminder, superpowers are not a good thing. Don't get involved. Things that can change human genes, of course, shouldn't be touched. She was reborn around the same time as me. Eyes can deceive people. She was surprised by my rebirth. Time. It suddenly occurred to me that in the previous life, Gunyan might not have died at all. She got rid of the team by using the zombie tide. At that time, I was so indignant for her that I didn't consider at all. Clearly there was another car. Why didn't she go drive the other car when everyone was getting on the car? I only saw the zombie knocking her down and didn't see anything else. What if she also had weapons at that time? Moreover, her superpower in the previous life was mental power. Maybe the ability to detect was simply a lie. While I was in a daze, Gunyan had already left. Gunyan has done a lot. Reasonably and emotionally, I can't suspect her relationship with the laboratory. Because of the evolution of the zombies, Gunyan and her teammates became even busier. The country also sent a lot of snipers. A woman's sixth sense told me that the zombie virus was about to end. During this period, that Wu-Yi was bitten to death by zombies. It could be considered revenge for my previous life. But, I still haven't used the little bit of blood my younger brother contributed. Indeed, my sixth sense was accurate. A year and a half later, with the killing of the last zombie, the country announced that 5-star country had won the fight against the CYM virus. During this year and a half, the zombies evolved many times, but because of the country and the army, each evolution was controlled. Half a year after the outbreak of the zombies, the country restored water and electricity supply. 8 months after the outbreak of the zombies, the country found several large factories to produce supplies. Reminded by my mother, our family donated some supplies. This also made our family receive an award personally presented by the president after the end of the CYM virus. On the award-giving stage, I saw Gunyan winking at me. Although we won this zombie war, post-war reconstruction was not easy. Moreover, the losses in this year and a half were also great. So, everyone returned to the 996 working slave life. Seeing that only half of the people in the original office were left, we cried bitterly in each other's arms. After crying, I calmly walked out of the office. Xiaoyu, aren't you going to work? Oh, I resigned a long time ago. The country gives our family a bonus every month, because of our meritorious donation of supplies. My colleagues insisted on me treating them, so I treated them to dumplings. My mother made them herself with pork filling. My colleagues who had eaten compressed biscuits for more than half a year cried even harder. I forgot to say that after the national large-scale supermarkets were emptied by the country, the factories the country found were all producing compressed biscuits. Now I've started a new working for someone else chapter under Gunyan. Because of my meritorious donation of supplies, the country paid off our family's loan from the bank. But the 6 million yuan borrowed from Gunyan hasn't been repaid yet. 6 million yuan, that's 6 million yuan. So, I started my daily routine of sweeping the floor, cooking and chatting. After I broke 58 bowls, 20 plates and set the kitchen on fire 3 times, Gunyan drove me out of the kitchen with a dark face. Come on, it's really cool to eat the boss's cooking. Gunyan's family company is developing very well, and she's very busy most of the time. So I have enough time to go home and accompany my parents. There are still a lot of supplies at home. My parents have a dog named Jiangyu. They say that when I'm not around, they think of me through it. Heh, I'm speechless. With the help of our whole family, my younger brother has finished high school content. Now he's really impressive at school. Of course, the top student in the grade who doesn't study every day is impressive. Who understands the pain I've suffered in this year and a half? My younger brother imitated the tone of the second male lead in the TV show, pounding his chest, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but turn up. You're the top student in the grade now. Do little girls chase after you? My younger brother's face instantly turned red, and he stuttered that he had someone he liked. As an older sister, I seriously educated him not to have a puppy love. 17 time flew by. It was New Year's Eve again. Gunyan invited my parents to spend the new year in her villa. My younger brother called her Nianjia non-stop, as if Gunyan were his real older sister. Jiangyu, my mother shouted loudly in the kitchen. I quickly went to the kitchen. I saw the dog also named Jiangyu biting my mother's trouser leg. Stop biting. Get out. Heh, I completely lost my status with my mother. But still, thanks to the dog for bearing my mother's anger for me. Jiangyu, my younger brother's voice came from the bathroom. I subconsciously thought he was calling the dog. After a while, my younger brother started again. Sister, are you still there? Oh, so he was calling me. I was at the entrance of the washroom. My younger brother asked in a low voice. Sister, do we still have laxatives? I looked at the date. Sorry, it's expired.